Will Budget 2022 be presented in the shadows of 5 very crucial assembly elections? This is a question that is being asked more and more, considering that a few weeks after that budget is delivered, you have crucial elections in Uttar Pradesh and other agrarian states that will be held underway. Now, the question here being, and even though a central government budget obviously has to focus on the large picture, but the question is that will this budget have overtones of an electoral budget, a please-all budget which will refrain perhaps from tough reform-like decisions and focus on pleasing potential voters in some of these states. Now, just to be clear, a union budget does not make specific allocations for states, but they can talk to various people or groups of people who are also voters. So, for example, it's widely expected that farmers will be given special attention to. Remember, this also has the backdrop of 3 controversial farm laws being rolled back after over a year of agitations. We could also see an increase in allocations for schemes such as MNREGA, something industry has also asked for, which would see more incomes in the hands of rural India. Having said this, what is the key political message we can expect from Finance Minister Nirmala Sitaraman's budget on the 1st of February? To speak on this, I'm joined today by Gopal Agarwal, National Spokesperson of the BJP. Sanjay Jha, former National Spokesperson of the Congress Party and political analyst, is joining us on the show. And senior journalist Madhavan Narayanan is also speaking with us today. Welcome to all of you and thank you so much for joining us. Sanjay, let me begin by getting your perspective. Do you think, like many are now guessing, that the budget will definitely have very strong political overtones?
Tamanna, I'm very glad you're discussing a very pertinent issue. In my opinion, I do believe that whichever political party is in government, they should actually postpone the budget beyond when the election is finally over and the winners are announced, the defeated go back home. Because the potential of the budget to at least create a narrative is extremely magnetic and powerful. For example, and I'm glad you raised it in your introductory talk, that the government can announce an MSP. The government can announce a new scheme for urban poverty. There can be many schemes like something on an unemployment allowance. So it can give the ruling political parties some degree of leverage. Ideally, I think it's politically moral for the budget to happen during the time of the elections. But, I think all parties at some point are guilty of it. So let's ignore that. In my opinion, I do expect Mr. Modi's government to clearly play to the farming community. Because remember, farmers they cut religion, they cut castes. They are a major vote bank in India. And if you look at them from the point of view of their income and their occupation profile, they are ideal micro-targeting to win votes and seats, which is why you find that in Western Uttar Pradesh, the BJP led by Mr. Amit Shah is extremely active because they realize it's a huge risk and they could lose a big chunk of votes where the farming community, the Jats in particular, seem to be disillusioned and angry with them. The fundamental point, though, also I need to concede that this is not going to be an easy budget for Nirmala Sitaraman. India is still recovering. We have come out on the negative GDP, but in terms of real output, India has virtually just grown by 1.2% in real GDP in the last 2 years. So really there is no tangible growth. So ultimately, I do concede that the government can announce a whole plethora of schemes, but the people of India are extremely sharp. They know that until the money comes into your bank account or you see something tactile change in your life, people don't fall for these promises. And mostly budgets say one thing, they really don't even end up delivering that. The divestment targets can be one remarkable example. But ideologically or politically or from the sales perspective, a government can leverage it. Will Mr. Modi's government do it? Looking at the past track record of the BJP, past masters at selling, the way they manipulate propaganda, I will leave Mr. Agarwal to answer that. He's also an economist. I do believe they will play to the gallery. But eventually, she's still constrained because the fiscal deficit is going to be a worry in her mind. And ultimately, you are counted because the next year is another year. And you can't really make it a very short-term political gain as well.
No, so it is going to be challenging, no doubt. Many are wondering if the 6.8% target for fiscal deficit will be ticked off. But it would not be the first or the last budget that is playing to the political gallery. One remembers the famous/infamous UPA budget, which waived off farm loans. And the economy bore the brunt of that for several years. Mr. Agarwal, having said that, would you think that the focus needs to be on upliftment of rural India? Because at the end of the day, a politically elected government needs to do things and make policy statements which are for the benefit of a large majority of people.
Tamanna ji, I would like two comments before I answer your question. One brief comments on taking cue from Sanjay Ji, that one thing is it is always better to announce schemes in the budget than announcing them in the manifesto. I think that is the much worst part of what political parties are doing. Second part I will like to mention here is that even in the many of the state governments and budget, they are announcing various freebies like Delhi government and not even providing them in their budget or the financial statements. So this is the worst part of economics that some political parties are playing. With having said that, one thing I would like to tell you is that at this point of time, post-pandemic, the private capital consumption is a big challenge for all of us. And informal sector is a big challenge for all of us. And any kind of money transfer or fund transfer to the informal sector or to the lower strata of the population will have a double benefit. One thing is that section will help, they need the required help that can be given. Second thing is the private consumption is a much needed support that this sector, the whole economy needs. So I think this is a good time when both objectives can be met, and the budget or anything announced in the budget and provided them in the budget, which we have done in the last budget also, including provision of payment to the FCI debt financing, including in the budget. I think the government is well aware of the challenges, and post-pandemic, the economic recovery of the India has been very nice. We are on strong fundamental economically, those challenges are there, but the way we dealt with the fiscal stimulus packages in not allowing for the helicopter money or large scale printing of currencies have put the central bank and the Ministry of Finance and the government in a better position to deal with another challenge of inflation, etc. So I think we are well poised. Our economy is on a sound footing. We understand the challenges, and those challenges will be met in the budget. It's a good time for economic reforms to take place, and the government is committed to reforms. That is the only way we can move forward. And economy, growth in the economy is the only way we can get the support of the people. This we
Mr.
are very
Agarwal,
clear.
Absolutely, but Mr. Agarwal, the broad consensus seems to be that the government may shy away from reforms at this time. You don't want to go into a very important election being accused of being a soot boot ki sarkar. Plus, you have had farmer groups upset with you over the last 1 year, which resulted in walking back on farm laws. Do you expect to see, and would you say that there will be a big focus on assuaging angry farmers?
The farmers were demanding that these three laws should be repealed. That has been done. And I think there was large-scale consensus that the farm reforms is needed, but still it was farmers who demanded. We tried to persuade them. Prime Minister himself has tried to persuade them. And it is their own loss that they have done certain vested interest. But I think the government is committed to reforms. Otherwise, we would not have gone for yesterday only. Finally, Air India was handed over to the private sector, Tata Group. So we are committed. We tried in the land reforms. We tried on the even in the farm reforms. We are committed to the labor reforms. So we know in the political economy, the current status of democratic system that is going on. It is very difficult for any government to go for reform, but ultimately, as a party, as an ideology, as a market-friendly ideology that we follow, we believe in free market economy, we believe industries and business community to be partners in the national building. We are committed. Still, if there may be resistance and challenges, we will go for labor reforms, disinvestment, monetization. All these things are in our agenda, and we will continue virtual assessment, GST. All these reforms are a big move forward that we are going to continue. And PLI has been successful. I think.
Okay, let me get in Madhavan's point of view.
I think, Tamanna, this is very interesting.
Let me get Madhavan in. The budget is coming. Yeah, let me pose the question. Let me pose the question to you, Madhavan. So the budget is coming in at a very difficult time, no doubt. The third wave has, I wouldn't say derailed, but has definitely obstructed the recovery process that the economy was facing. We will have to budget in perhaps for booster shots, a larger amount on healthcare, and you have these big elections around the corner. Would you agree that the big elections around the corner would play heavily on the government's mind when this budget is being given its final touches?
Yes, let me put it in very simple terms, Tamanna. It is playing heavily on the BJP government's minds. But I completely agree with what Gopal Krishna Agarwal said. If you observe this Modi government, they believe in packaging for the people, but the product is not for the people in the populist sense. So what I have been observing is that they give a lot of emphasis to slogans and schemes, but they do not really spend too much on them. You have to look at the numbers, you have to look at the allocation. So I call it soft populism. So I have a slogan that BJP must be using in its back rooms, which is, branded big, but spend it small. So they brand everything big, but they don't spend it the way. All the real spending is taking place in what I would call muscular infrastructure, whether they are expressways or airports or, and Mr. Agarwal said it rightly. I mean, whether you take there is no let up in what you would conventionally call market reforms. Air India has been privatized. LIC is ready for an IPO. What we have to watch out for is things like a slowdown in the bad bank, which has finally been put into shape only today, which is really slow. The asset monetization pipeline has not yet been coming the way it should have been. But all the real between walking and talking, the talking is in terms of populism, but there is something amazing about Mr. Modi's political communication, which is that he manages to package a very small product as a very big one in political idioms. With there are articulate spokesperson and friendly television channels, so it will appear very political. It will appear populist. But unlike the Congress party, which has a history of putting the money where the mouth is in terms of MNREGA or various kinds of allocation towards what I call the soft infrastructure, such as health and education, this government I expect to be populist only in terms of MSMEs, the medium and small enterprises. Even there, the structure of the populism has to be observed very closely. The Modi government believes in what I call, they believe in things like capital subsidies and credit guarantees, not too much of handouts. So, but they will hope that there will be a knock-on effect in terms of helping the informal sector and putting money in the hands of ordinary workers who are employed by the SMEs and all. But this is a political gamble, which is why politically the idioms are all in favor of Vikas, as in big Vikas, not small Vikas. Big Vikas is expressways, airports, and they also have promises like or fulfilled promises like the Ayodhya temple and a very clear social agenda, even bordering on polarization, which very, very clearly shows that they are not relying on economic populism for votes. But it will be so well packaged, this budget, I can tell you that it will appear unless there are hair-splitting economists who look at the number, they will be writing in long-winded articles in the Hindu and Economic and Political Weekly lately. But this is not allocation Raj. This is more like muscular infrastructure Raj, but everybody will be thinking it's very populist. This is my forecast on the budget.
Can I say something, Tamanna? Briefly.
Okay, so it will seem more populist than it is. Yes, Mr. Agarwal.
Briefly, I would like to say that you said that it is a very challenging time. I don't think that it is a very challenging time, because if you know the challenges and you have the roadmap, there is not a difficult, because if you look in the economy, compare it with the global other economies, our central bank and our finance ministry government is in a better position. You see the inflation, which is being a challenge for US and other things. We are not in that position. CPI is very low. WPI is higher. So commodity prices, we have a way that we reduce import and custom duties. Second thing is, important thing is that the liquidity, the informal sector needs support, and that will help if the government gives any scheme which supports the informal sector through direct benefit transfer, fund transfer, it will increase the private consumption. So the thing is, and fiscal deficit roadmap is also that the government has said that we will go for a glide path, will not in short term will not be steep. So I think the economy is in a shape where challenges are there, but the post-pandemic, the roadmap is very clear.
Yeah, I don't know how. No, but Mr. Agarwal, to say that there are no challenges, I don't know how correct that is.
No, I said challenges are there, but no, I said, no, Tamanna ji, I said,
month high.
No, Tamanna ji, I said challenges are there, we know the challenge.
Experience is much more.
No, I am saying we know the challenges and there is a roadmap to meet them. Therefore,
all true. Yes. So there is a roadmap to meet them, undoubtedly. But the question is that where will the focus be at this point? Mr. Jha, you want to come in on that? Do you think that the fact that there is a need right now to generate the right headlines will also be taken into consideration, whether it's on things like farm reforms, doubling farmer incomes, which was supposed to happen by 2022, or something like unemployment, which is now flared up in the context of railway recruitments in UP and Bihar. There will be a need to at least communicate by the central government that they're doing something about these issues.
Well, Tamanna, that's exactly what I was about to quote. The whole protests that happened in Uttar Pradesh and Bihar, where I come from, and to tell you that is a manifestation, a very violent manifestation, unfortunately, where the young students who are, part of India's educated unemployed have had to burn trains to capture the government's attention. I mean, that is a serious, serious matter. So Gopalji will have to take cognizance of that reality. You see, for a long time, everybody knows that India is facing a major joblessness problem. The point is, when it comes to elections, Mr. Modi's government wins on a very aggressive Hindutva campaign. So issues like economy, inflation, jobs, farmer distress eventually fade out because of the hyper-nationalism in the Hindutva campaign. As a result, we are very often divorced from ground realities. Now, the other example that I'll tell Gopalji, unemployment is a big one. And trust me, sir, when the young who are actually, if you go by the CMIE report, the labor participation levels have gone down, which means people who are unemployed are not even going into the job market. That to me is a terrible sign, which means you will see a lot more of disguised unemployment in agriculture and people doing some, small jobs on their own to just survive day to day. And, the other disturbing element, Gopalji, you're an economist, you will know better because I'm sure you're advising the government. The number of casual labor in the gig economy is rising. So, the insecurity in the young of India is extremely high. And the second data is extremely disturbing, Tamanna, which is that the income of the poorest 20% in India. This is the data that your viewers need to know. that the income of the poorest 20% in India has gone down by 53% in the last 5 years. Now, can you imagine the poorest at the bottom of the pyramid? That Mr. Modi always keeps talking about, this big Vikas story, which I'll be very honest, is nothing but a hollow spin. The truth is that you have not been able to change India's story for those who really need government assistance. Government expenditure cannot be the way to sustain an economy. You need private investment, you need exports, you need demand. For all of them, you need to actually create a greater degree of handouts that Madhavan was talking about, that your government is reluctant to do so. And therefore, if 230 million people post-pandemic have now entered the poverty story, they were neo-middle class, who today, because of one illness, one marriage, one extraordinary event, have suddenly become poor. I mean, the government has a gigantic task on hand. So, I will concede one point. Mr. Modi and his government are brilliant at the way they manage to create this narrative that everything is hunky-dory, and Mr. Modi is the solution to all of India's problems. But when you get down into the numbers, it's a very disconcerting, tragic number. To my mind, inequality rising, poverty rising, unemployed youth taking to burning trains are signs that there is a serious fault line in India's economy. The farmers were 1 year on the roads because they felt, hang on, we're not getting a deal.
Yeah. No, so there is a dichotomy here, isn't it? On the one hand, Mr. Jha, you are listing out reasons why, in your view, we need what is typically called a populist budget, which will look at first assuaging concerns of a large number of people who've been hit by the pandemic. What economists and policy watchers, on the other hand, are hoping for is a return to the reforms track. So what really are we going to see over here? You want to come in quickly on that?
No, let me give you a quick one. Tamanna, the biggest mistake we make is that we believe reforms is about corporate tax reduction, FDI, FII. I think reforms has to be with a human face, right? So increasing a MNREGA allocation or starting a new scheme for urban poor, or maybe, creating a new scheme to make sure that women entrepreneurs are given something else. That is also reforms. To believe that reforms is only 1991, big buck, bad bank, merger of banks, some kind of a stock market incentive in terms of dividend tax, that is taking a very parochial perspective. In my opinion, what you say is populism. Tamanna, I would call it as a moral responsibility of any government in power.
May I come in?
So Tamanna, let me conclude with Madhavan coming in on this. Yeah.
I think Sanjay Jha makes a moral case. He discusses economy and data, but I'm not interested in that for a peculiar reason. I feel that this protests in Bihar over the railway recruitment is only a rare exception in 7 years where the economy has come to the streets apart from the farmers' protests. And therefore, we need to ask whether Mr. Modi is stretching it too far and assuming that populist economics doesn't matter, that jobs don't matter, and because most important, even inflation is only a tad short of the RBI's upper end target of 6%. So please remember, BJP has historically relied on lower middle class perspectives on inflation. So if inflation crosses, inflation is more dangerous to BJP's traditional constituencies than, let's say, unemployment. This is my contention. And there is a clear walking of the government is on thin ice because we are talking about a K-shaped recovery. And in spite of excellent political communication and big branding of small schemes like Ujjwala and all, sounds very good. But if you look at it as a percentage of GDP, they are nothing. So the correct way to look at it is the government on a short fuse in terms of the conversion of economic issues into a political problem, and things are reaching that point of decision. And the railway protests in Bihar may be the first one. We have not seen anything as big as the JP movement, but we have seen the farmers' movement. And as of now, although the farm laws have been rolled back, Tamanna, the important point is that nothing has moved forward on that front of farmers who are probably running into hundreds of millions. 115 million registered farmers by government data. which basically means you're looking at 400 million people. So those are serious issues. But congratulations to the Modi government, because they managed to avoid so far, or managed to get away with it, of not putting their mouth where the money, money where the mouth is, as far as the bottom half of the society is concerned. But the time is running short. So as far as your point, reforms, Tamanna, I agree with Mr. Gopal Agarwal, which is that reforms have not been put on a stop. Everything has, in a market sense of the term, everything is moving forward, except that if foreign exchange rates fluctuate because of high fiscal deficit, then there might be a problem. Or if oil prices shoot up, there might be a problem. But as of now,
I think the only ones I would,
Tamanna,
yeah,
briefly,
if I were to make a list, yeah, if I were to make a list of the, just 1 second, sir. If I were to make a list of the reforms that this government hasn't been able to touch so far, of course, the farm laws, which they had to roll back, I would add labor in that list as well, where all the rules are there in place, but they haven't been notified yet. Unlikely perhaps to happen in this budget. Land reforms took a back seat after the first tenure as well. So, Mr. Agarwal, I know you want to respond, but let me just add this question in it. Despite its majority and its stability, this government is also well aware of areas that no political party in India can venture.
Yeah, Tamanna, I tell you two small examples. Many of the things Mr. Sanjay Jha told were from the historical baggage. I'll not go who is the cause of it, employment, all those concentration of wealth. These are not new. But what I would like to tell you is, we have tried to tackle them. I'll give you one example. Under the GST, average tax rate under GST is 11.6%. Where when the GST was formulated, it was envisaged that the net revenue, tax revenue under the GST will be 15.5%. We have ample scope for that also. So the thing is that the indirect tax, direct corporate tax, all have been been implemented. So there are ample scope for tax to GDP ratio. There is ample scope for expanding the continuing with the fiscal deficit because of the global scenario. Inflation, CPI is low. The liquidity sucking time is there. PLI is taking up. How employment will be generated? It will be only generated through manufacturing sector. Street vendor schemes are there. So government, the challenges are not that difficult, that those challenges are there, those problems are there, but we have to move to tackle them through reforms only. That is the thing that I want to say from the point of view of the government.
One small point. I think, Tamanna,
okay.
I think unless there are...
Yeah, we'll have to wrap it here. Okay, Madhavan, come in quickly. Yes.
Very, very quickly, unless there are jobs by the millions in the informal sector, this government is on a short fuse politically. Let me put it very clear. And as far as market reforms are concerned, unless there is demand at the bottom of the society in a demographic transition, you're sitting on a political time bomb.
So both things point out that the informal sector has a scope for support from the government, which is politically also correct and economically also correct.
If you listen to some of the people that we talk to, just a minute, gentlemen, if you listen to some of the people that we talk to regularly on this program, and they will tell you that unless you help those 30% restaurants which have shut down, unless you help those small businessmen who could not keep their shops open after 3 waves of the pandemic, then you will have a reduction in jobs. Whether you call it informal sector or semi-skilled or whatever you want, you can't really fulfill the jobs quota only with software engineers that a few companies are fighting over and offering huge increments. That isn't the full picture, and that's perhaps what we've been seeing in UP and Bihar. Nevertheless, I have to wrap here, and I want to thank all of you for joining us.
One quick point before you wrap up. I need to tell
tightrope walk. It's a tightrope walk for the finance minister. Yeah. No, I'll
know,
have to wrap it, Sanjay, unfortunately. So it's a tightrope walk for the finance minister this time around in this budget. And no one can deny that political compulsions are always at the back of the mind. I mean, it is a politically elected government which has to speak to its voters and its constituents. But this time round, it might be even more pronounced considering the very crucial elections around the corner. We'll wait and watch this space. Thank you so much to all of you.